Thank you so much for joining us today, Christian.
Thanks
I know there's a great many people here that are very excited at hearing from you. I believe we have 20 minutes, so I'm going to dive straight into it if that works for you.
And I'm not known for short answers, so
okay.
It's going to be challenging. But
okay, so here we go. So obviously we know that biotech stocks have fallen across the board, but psychedelic stocks seem to have fallen more than the rest of the stock market. Why do you believe that is?
First of all, biotech is catching up. Like the whole market is shit. Like so meaning like, let's start at a very high level. There is 2 points why psychedelic stocks maybe a bit more, but like for the non sort of followers of stock market, like especially growth stocks, the same for tech and the same for biotech, because the profit lies in the future. Because we all know, I think it's a topic of the day, like how long does it take? Yeah. I think it's going to be very quick in biotech terms, but it's some years ahead. So, and when you do a so-called DCF model, discounted cash flow, and you discount further profits and cash flows, obviously the further they are away, the more the discount rate matters, and the discount rate is correlated to interest rates, and we all know that there is inflation. Inflation makes interest rates go up. So to a certain extent in that environment, that sort of growth stocks, both tech and biotech, consolidate, come down is actually justified. However, markets are never rational. Like a year ago, I would say they priced markets everything to perfection. In January last year, people were like, oh my God, interest rates gonna stay zero forever, and like everything is great, and there is no war, and blah, blah, blah. So now, and this was maybe too extreme, or it was too extreme hindsight, and now actually at the moment everything is priced for the worst. Or now interest rates going to go up, and they're going to go up a lot, and there is a war, And yes, these problems are real, but I always think the truth is always sort of in the middle. So you have these pendulums. So in my point of view, in generally for the whole, by the way, especially for the entire biotech market, I think we're going to sit here, and hopefully you're doing that annually, in a year, in 2, in 3, and going to look back, and you can play the recording, and I'm always up for when I'm wrong, but I think the probability is very high that in 2 years we look back and say, this was an amazing investment opportunity, because actually a lot of biotech stocks practically are trading at not a real value, because many of them have cash. Like atai has around $350 million cash. So sort of the net value is actually almost zero. And now I would say, look, whatever happens, and I'm going to take atai as an example, but I could give you other stocks, because here I'm obviously sort of talking about my own company, but that is true for many, many stocks in any biotech part. If we have more than 9 clinical programs, and I don't need to say here how important mental health is, but if you have just one of them, and actually my belief, again, this is not we have to prove it, but my belief is that actually almost all of them should work, because this is always when we talk about psychedelics, we know they work, from an anecdotal perspective, but if just one of these drugs work, if you have a solution for depression, if you have a solution for anxiety, whatever, take just one indication, that is worth something in any market phase. So if interest rates went to 10%, which they don't panic, but still a depression drug is worth something and not zero. So that shows maybe a bit how sort of markets are overreacting. So that is sort of the whole biotech market. Sorry for the long answer. Then the other part is, are psychedelics more hit? Maybe in average. I think the real problem with psychedelics is that there are some, but not a lot, legit companies. Because if you're a company, you have to have a business model. And if you have a business model, means that you have a product, which is a medical product, which you somewhere can bring to market. That means you're financing your clinical trials. So with that sentence alone, you can push double-digit numbers of companies out, because they don't have the money and will not raise it in these markets, and should not raise it, because they don't have no patents, coming to that in a second. But already, if you don't have the money, you're not going to get there, so you don't have a viable business model anymore. And then the second question is, even if you can finance clinical trials, you need to have the patents around it. And I know it's a very spicy topic, and I love it, because that is what makes these companies succeed and ultimately bring relief to patients. So, and the problem is that people conflated, and I think investors alike, conflated the whole renaissance of psychedelics with cannabis, because the headline is the same. There is a once sort of illegal, stigmatized drug or group of drugs which is now sort of moving into a different pocket. But that's it. That's the only similarity cannabis and psychedelics have, because then psychedelics from what they should be, it's a medical thing. So, but investors financed every shit in the boom, yeah. And now I think that is disturbing, sort of investors. If you look at the market, like, wait a moment, they're like, I don't know who told me this insane number. Like a bank said there are like more than 100 companies out there who somehow have the label psychedelic on it. Yeah. Truth is, there may be 5 or 6 who really do serious business. So, and that is maybe adding to everything I just told you about the biotech market. It's bringing another level of insecurity, yeah, which we will work through because the truth prevails. But like in these markets, that's maybe a burden on these stocks, on the good ones.
To what extent do you believe that the Compass COMP360 study has influenced the market reaction?
Zero. Because like it happened, it should have positively, because the data is amazing and excellent, but actually the data came out in the week when biotech started to tank. Yeah, and what normally people who are in something emotionally, like sort of obviously my colleagues at Compass, but even you here you are emotionally in a positive way vested into it, you normally tend to overinterpret sort of how people understand details. The fact was that biotech as a whole started to go down. So I'm 100% convinced, because people ask me, like, calling me the whole day for a whole week, like, yeah, oh my God, was there anything we missed? Why did the Compass stock go down? Because, by the way, if I would show you the data and Compass would have not been stock market listed, every analyst, every investor would have said, well, the value of the company just doubled. The data was so good that sort of if you leave market and fluctuation and panic, whatever out, like everybody would have told you, well, fundamentally, the company just doubled in value, yeah? But because the whole sector went down, again, biotech sector, not just psychedelic sector, people were like taking that non-correlated event of biotech going down and were sort of trying to say, oh, something maybe was not as good. And no, the data was excellent. But it didn't come through because it came, unfortunately, and by the way, market hasn't changed since then. Yeah, it came, unfortunately, at a time where people are not interested. It's going to change again, yeah, but like at the moment, this is why I can give me any quality biotech stock and I can tell you, yeah, why the stock price most likely should be 5x, yeah, but people are not interested in it at the moment because they have completely other problems, or their mind, and then we're coming to mental health, yeah, is occupied with war, inflation, interest rates going up, and they have no space in their mind.
So you think it's macro-driven?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. Do you think we'll see further? Do you think we'll see further market consolidations in 2022? And what do you think are the main opportunities for incumbent investors?
Well, consolidation, you would mean like companies merging. I think that's going to be little because there are not so many companies who are worth something because they don't have patents. Yeah. So, so why would somebody who has patents merge with somebody who doesn't have a viable business model? I think that is a pipe dream of the ones who want to merge away into heaven. Yeah. So, interestingly, because by the way, I don't think that atai is the only one, but I think it's a handful. And the handful of companies I value, they are actually strong enough. They have their own culture. So I actually think sort of I would say 5, 6 real ones. There is a value of being even standalone because by the way, in any other business, merging can also destroy stuff. You have different company cultures. So I'm not sort of a believer in this consolidation, again, because I think there are not so many to be consolidated. So
elaborating a bit on that, how do you believe different players in the ecosystem will weather the storm, and what are the features of those who will?
But by the way, so I have to say two things. The one is all my answers were based on, so this was sort of my own preoccupation with drug development. Yeah. So talking about companies who want to develop medical drugs for mental health. So there are actually additional psychedelic companies or additional companies who have sort of the relation to psychedelics, clinic models like digital therapeutics, apps, whatever. So the ecosystem, because you mentioned, is way bigger. So this is important. I thought the discussion, which I think it is, but I want to make it clear, this one here is about drug development, and then sort of the number is pretty small. So by the way, you also ask, I forgot to answer that because I think I want to emphasize it. What is the opportunity for newbies? Meaning it's the best time to invest. Meaning, again, I take atai, but I could take some others as well, is way, way, way cheaper than it ever was in every financing round we did. Because we're way bigger, we're way more mature, we have the data, and sort of, so it's actually for newbies, best time sort of to enter the psychedelic market if you want.
And
you want to ask more about patterns, so you should do it.
Yeah.
She's very nice and very kind. She's like, what can I ask you? I have zero filter, so,
okay,
so
great.
you can ask me anything.
Well, that goes on to the next question then, which is obviously, as we've heard earlier here today, there are some different opinions in terms of, how this emerging industry should evolve. And given your position in this industry, you must surely face some occasional questions and criticism. And so what do you...
I wake up every day and hopefully somebody said something about the patterns, because otherwise I would be afraid the position is less strong than I think. So the more people criticize, the more they say you're actually doing something right. So it's like it's calming my mind.
Yeah, and we actually deliberately positioned the question this way because I'm interested in hearing what you think is the most pressing criticism, and then you brought up patent, and obviously I'm curious of how you respond to those.
No, so on a serious note, because when it really comes to my mind, like you always have to have a positive view on everything, that it's the best way to live your life. But like, sort of, I think there is two things. I think there are some people who are deliberately sort of trying to misunderstand things because they're either from jealous to whatever, So if I leave that aside, but I do think there is a group of people who, because they don't understand the nuances, the headline, there are a handful of companies who sort of, let's use the negative word, control something or whatever, that this is sort of, it makes them uncomfortable, But like, let's dissect what patents really mean and what they don't mean. So first of all, because I really meet people who believe that, I'm not going to show up at Burning Man and take your mushrooms away. It's important, you're totally safe, and I'm going to actually party with you. I really mean it, because people think sometimes that these patents anyhow sort of have hand-on sort of the nature products. No, they don't. All these patents are around synthetic versions, and then synthetic versions combined with the medical use. What people do in shamanistic context, what people do is like, it's completely not touched by that. Second, I think people, and I can just recommend Brian Moresco's book, The Immortality Key, should look into the history, because then people are saying, you want to make it medical now, but they were always free. No, they weren't. So the 60s were an exemption, they were a mistake, and they led to decades of stigmatization of these drugs, because the people in the 60s were too crazy with it. The 1,000 years before, since we know, all these cultures were extremely restrictive. They had access control for these drugs. There were therapists, which were called, or are called, shamans. You had to follow a strict protocol. By the way, you will see the protocols we are developing and other companies are developing are eerily similar to protocols shamans have, from fasting to intention setting to post-integration. So people in ancient Egypt, people at the Eleusinian mysteries, people in what they didn't party away on these drugs, they didn't throw it around, and there was extreme control, maybe more than we want to do, by a caste of priests and shamans, because it was meant to be for mental health, for spiritual enlightenment. So what we are recreating, and I mean the companies who do it responsibly, is what these drugs have always been, with the exception of the 60s. Third, we always should not forget why we're doing that. We're doing that not, as much as I think it's great, for the people at Burning Man. We're not doing that for the people at Berghain in Berlin. We're doing that for the more than 1 billion people, and that number is grossly underestimated, because there is a huge number of people who still are stigmatized, ashamed to come forward. We're doing it for those people who have medical issues. Those people, look at the Netherlands, because you could go to a coffee shop in the Netherlands and help yourself. people don't, because if you're fucking depressed, you need help in a bigger context, and you need somebody who guides you through a process, because depression doesn't fall, you don't wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I'm depressed now. There is a path of trauma, of pain, of emotional stuff, which amazingly psychedelics can support with a therapist together to sort of unwind it, but you need that guidance. If people start self-medicating, they don't, most of them don't, but if they did, we're gonna have also very negative cases, because again, I want to always use the, so a party trip is not a trip to dissolve a deep trauma. So these trips can be extremely challenging, and if you don't have a therapist next to you, they can easily tip in the wrong thing, and then it's a personal problem, meaning an individual tragedy if some person would do it alone and whatever, but immediately we live in a society where one case, and there were cases in Amsterdam for psychedelic drugs which were for a time decriminalized, and then they became criminalized again, because people had accidents on it, because they had maybe even trauma they didn't know about. So they wanted to do a party trip, but then they uncovered trauma and it really unraveled. So there is so much recklessness in this idea that they should be just thrown out or given in any shop, and especially it puts patient last, and we should put patient first.
Got it. And so,
sorry that I got a little emotional, but
And so, going back to the question about the features of the players that you think will weather the current market storm, could you talk a little bit to that?
Well, at the moment, by the way, that's a general answer because it's true for any tech business, cash matters. So you have to be fully financed, because raising funds right now, like in 2022, I think is extremely challenging for any tech business, not just for psychedelics, not just for biotech. So at the moment, I think that, again, it's sort of having a viable business model, but also having the cash to weather the storm. Because markets will change. The good thing is markets are a cycle, like life is a cycle. You just need to still be alive, when sort of the next thing happens. Well, by the way, it's one of the simplest things of investing, just be alive. There is a cycle, and you just go through it.
As an investor in this space, looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently? Obviously,
raised more cash. For anything, for every single company, I should have raised even more cash. We have a lot of cash, but but it's so simple. I don't think, by the way, one of the big mental health sources of mental health is that question: what would I have done differently? Because the past is the past. And it sounds so cheesy, like in a Deepak Chopra book, but you can change the future. So focus on now. I tell all my companies, luckily, especially in the psychedelic, Compass and Atai are almost overly funded. A year ago, by the way, I thought I have raised too much. At the IPO, was damn it, dilution. And now I'm what have not been bad? Even more. Anyway, but we're well financed. And now, actually, I think you need to, there's two different answers. For investors, I would say, as I said, it's the best time. I'm deeply, deeply convinced. Can be quoted on that. It's the best time somewhere in these months. Nobody knows if the stock market is going down even further a bit, but I think if we look back what I said before, in 2 years, this year somewhere was the best time to newly invest or add on your investments in psychedelics. As a company, if you are fully financed, you almost have to say, okay, ignore the stock market because it doesn't contribute to your mental health, and just execute, and then you're ready, or you're sort of, you have more, you have reached more milestones once sort of the market starts looking at fundamentals again. At the moment, market doesn't look at fundamentals.
In addition to that, is there any other learnings that you're bringing from the last year?
Raise more cash.
No,
it's look, you can always, because it's I think we all, it sounded very rational, analyzed what I just said, that the life is a cycle, but then when you're in the cycles, you get carried away. So we got all carried away, and I was also thinking, oh, maybe it's different this time. It's never different, but and then you're okay, and now, by the way, you're thinking as well, but now I try to remind myself that it's not going to stay bad all the time. Funnily, even if you know about how our mind works, you still at least partly fall into the traps which our human mind is building. You just can try sort of be better next time.
Is that it? Okay. Thank you so much, Christian.
Thank you.
Love having you here.